you'll find when you're ready to start this one, under the organic rigging on Canvas is the last name Chickster. And so this is what we're going to be rigging. So kind of similar to what I showed last time, where we're going to be playing with joints and stuff. But we'll also be adding some extra things for like these areas here and here. So we don't necessarily have to animate those individually. We'll be able to basically do those dynamically. That's the goal anyway. And then obviously the eyeball, we want to be able to create some sort of control so we can control what he's actually looking at. So we'll be doing that as well. His UVs are all laid out, so if you decided that you wanted to put a texture on him, you could bring him into Mari if you wanted to paint him, or some other application as well. So with this guy, it all starts with joints, because that's how we're going to be starting the rig process of this. And when you do anything, you should always look at a reference. So this is kind of like, say, a dinosaur. More like a dinosaur, like a T-Rex type thing, as far as the bone structure goes. You'll see that his knees actually like bend forward. So he actually has knees that bend forward, unlike some other birds where they bend backwards, right? So you want to look at where the bones are. Everything when we do a character like this is going to have like one central joint, okay? And that central joint is going to be right here in the center of him. That's going to be like his main control, where we can grab that and move the entire character pretty much around. So I'm going to draw some joints. So I need to go into my front view or side view or whatever view so I can see it here. And I go to my joint tool. And I'm going to create my first joint about there. Okay. Now, just so you can see it, I'm going to turn my joint size up more. Hey, they fixed it. Oh, still more. Model this guy huge. There we go. That's a good size. Okay. So somewhere around here in the center is where I'm going to draw my first joint. Now, we put joints everywhere we want some way to control him. Okay. Bless you. And we have to have points to move him around. So this joint here is basically going to cover all of this stuff. Okay? That's what his purpose is. His purpose is to be able to grab all of that stuff. When I move joints inside there, I really wouldn't want anything else to kind of like collapse or anything. Okay. So my next joint is going to be over here by the base of the neck. And then my next joint will be kind of in the middle. And then my next joint will be up here. And then my final joint will be like in the middle of the eye-ish. Okay. Now I need to get back here to draw the ones for the legs. So I hit the up arrow a few times. And then I go to my other view and I put the leg one in. Okay. So I'm putting this about where the leg would be. Then I switch back to my other view and then middle click and I can move it over. Okay. You can even look at it in the top view or perspective view if you need to, just to make sure that it's kind of like sitting in the middle of that hip area. Then I'm going to draw the knee one, switch to my side view, make sure it's in the center, switch back to front view, put the one in for the ankle. Now we're getting to too big of a joint size, so let's shrink these down. There we go. Switch back to my side view. Yep, that's good. And then I'm going to go back here. So for this one, if I were just to put one joint, pretty much right here, I wouldn't be able to actually rotate those toes around. I want to be able to rotate the toes around. So I have to put a joint right at the base of the toes, or right at the base of this. And then if I want to be able to arch the toe, I need a joint in the middle. So I'll put a joint in the middle. And then if I want one right at the end, just so I can see that they go all the way to the end. Okay. Now these are probably not lined up correctly. Actually, those ones are not too bad. The other ones will not be. I'll have to tweak those. So I always put one like this. So each one of these toes, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3 joints. So I go the up arrow back to this, and then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Now I would go to perspective so to see this, and you'll see that he's off. That's no big deal. So I'm just going to switch back to my move tool, and then just grab this joint and move it over. Then grab this joint and move it over. Then grab this joint and move it over. Now I want this to be a little bit there. Then I want this thing to be on this foot, so I duplicate it, Control D, And you'll see that when I move it now, it actually moves and stays connected. Like these joints right here are still connected. There we go. Okay. So now I have all the joints that I'm going to need for this character, except for the other side. So I'm going to go through and label these. It's important you label the stuff because you want to make sure that everything is nice and organized so that when you start grabbing stuff, you know what you're grabbing. So I have these joints here. Now, when you label joints, his right is the right. Okay, so that way when you look at it, when we look at where his right is, it's right here. That way you won't get confused because now this is the right. Correct? Correct. So I'm going to call this right underscore hip. I'm going to hit the down arrow, right underscore knee. Down arrow again, right underscore ankle. Hit the down arrow. Then I'll grab this one, right underscore back toe base. Hit the down arrow, right underscore back toe mid. I'm just going to copy that whole thing and let's call that tip. And then I go here, and this will be the left. We'll call it the inner. That might make more sense. Inner toe base. And then this is inner toe mid. Okay, and then I go to this side and do the same thing. This will be the outer. Okay, cool. All right, so all of those are labeled. So now I can mirror this over to this side. So I just grab this joint of where I want to start the mirror. I go to my skeleton and then I say mirror joints, just like we did on the Pokeball. We're going to switch the word right and change it to left. We're doing this in the XY. So the Z direction is going left and right. So I pick the one without that Z direction. And then I hit mirror. And that flips over to the other side. And then everything that was right is now left. Now it's important you spelled things correctly in the other one, because if you didn't, then one of your rights would not turn into a left. All right, that's cool. So now let me go and rename the rest of this. Pelvis, neck base, neck mid, head base, head tip. Cool. All right, so I'm going to save this as Sarcona Startup Chickster. All right, so now I need to go through and orient all my joints. So because I created joints and I moved them, if I grab one of these and try to rotate it, you can see how its rotate is off. Like this is rotating this way. I want it to rotate like in line with it, okay? So I'm going to grab the pelvis joint and go under skeleton and say orient. Okay, and what that's going to do is it's going to go through all the joints and line them up correctly. Okay, so if I come back down here to this, now this is going to rotate the correct direction, like that. Okay, perfect. And the same thing on this side. Now the orient joint goes through each one. So when I clicked on that pelvis, it goes down the entire chain and does it to every single joint in that chain. So I don't need to grab every single one of them, it automatically does it. Now the pelvis joint, if you look at it from the front view, you'll see that this joint is not oriented correctly. What it does is it tries to figure out which direction the joints are flowing. So with this one, it's kind of like off, like it's not rotating correctly. right? So if I wanted to just take his body and turn it sideways, I can't do that because this one's going this way and that one's going that way, and trying to estimate, he's going to be kind of wobbly. So this one I have to manually do. So I hit F8, which takes me here, and then I turn off my points and I turn on these question marks. And those question marks allow me to grab that rotation and set it up exactly how I want. So I'm going to hit the plus sign a couple times to make my circle big. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at this line. You can see how this line right here is kind of like stepped. If this is flat, what should happen is it should line up perfectly flat. So I'm just going to rotate it until it's perfectly flat. There we go. So now you can see that that is perfectly flat. So now when I hit F8 to go back, if I needed to rotate him sideways, now I have a way to rotate him perfectly sideways without causing any harm or bending him forward or whatever. Okay. So I'm going to save that again. Cool. Now comes the fun part. Now I'm going to actually make him move. So right now I move the joints and nothing happens. He stays still. So I always make sure I go back to the beginning. I always want to make sure too that none of my joints have any rotations on them, which they don't. Okay, so everything's squared off. It's good. I'm going to grab his joints. I'm going to shift click his skin. And under skin, I'm going to say bind skin. And this is how we attach the skin to the joint so that they move together. I'm going to reset this. I'm going to change my closest distance to heat map. I can't remember right now what that one does, but it actually gave me the best results. And then I'm going to change my skinning method to dual quaternion, whatever that means. And these two things, just changing those, will radically change what the end result is going to look like. Okay, so then I just hit bind skin. And what it's going to do now is find each one of these joints, figure out what pieces of geometry are close to it, and then use those to control them. So now if I click on this joint and I go to rotate it, oops. Apparently I forgot to grab my hip joint and fix those. I'm undoing. My hip joint is not lined up. I thought it was not. So I just switch back, go to my front view, and then just rotate this so that it is. So I'm going to pull this up like this, rotate it like this. And so now I'm looking at all three of these circles, and all three should not be stepped. They all should be perfectly square. Okay. If it's a little bit off, it's not going to be a huge deal, but you just don't want it to be too much. Yeah, that's good. And I'll do the same thing to the other side just to make sure. Okay. So I'm rotating this until the Y is up, and then the X is in front. Then I can just rotate the blue, rotate the green, rotate the red. Okay. And then I'm just going to double check and just make sure that both of these have their X facing forward. So this one has the X facing forward, this one has the X facing forward. Okay. So now I'll try that again. Grab both of these, go back to my skin, go back to bind skin. All right, so now if I grab this and rotate it, now we're getting some movement. Now this is not going to be perfect, but it will be pretty good for the time involved and time we've spent on this. So that's actually a pretty decent result. So now each one of these things will allow us to rotate our joints. You'll see we're even getting some folding here, which is like really awesome. Like that's what you want, because when you fold your arms and stuff, you'll see like little creaks and cracks, and that's what we want. Even our toes right here, if I click on this toe, shift click that toe and rotate, you'll see how we get the flexibility to move each one of these toes. So that's the nice thing about this specific model, is that he's pretty dang perfect for doing this kind of thing. All right, cool. And then we'll even check out the neck. I always check out all the areas because you want to see what it's doing before you get any further. Okay, now you'll notice that the eye is not going with it. That's no big deal. We'll adjust that after. All right, so it looks like he's good. So now we can start to create some of the controls for it. So I'm not going to go into all the controls for this. I'm just going to keep this kind of simple for now. So I'm making a circle, and that's going to be his main controller. Okay, so this item here at his hips is what's going to control the entire character kind of moving forward. So I want to be able to grab the circle and pull it forward and move him. So I'm going to go to freeze transform. Once I get the circle in position, I'm going to call this Chickster master control. Cool. And that's going to control him. So I'm just going to grab this pelvis, shift click this curve, and hit P to parent it. So now when I click on this and move it, you'll see that the entire dude moves with it. Okay. Now I need to create a control for, let's say, the eye here. So I'm going to create another circle. And this circle here is what I want the guy to be like looking at. That's what I'm going to use to control him. So when I move this, I'm basically going to control like what he's pointing at. Down a little bit. Let me go to the front view or side view so I can see it. So I want to get it, pretty close to the center of his eye. That's pretty close. All right. He's like staring at it. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to shift click on the circle here, and I'm going to parent it to the circle. Okay. So now when I grab this and move it, that circle goes with it. I need to also grab the eye and connect the eye into the head. So I'm going to grab the eye, shift click this joint right here at the tip, and hit P to parent it. Okay, so now the eye will now move with it, with the rest of it. So I click this and move, and you'll see everything goes with it. Okay, so now I need to connect it so that these two pieces are working together. Okay, so I need to freeze transform so I don't have all these crazy numbers. So I go to modify freeze transform. I click on this, I shift click the eye, and then I'm going to go to constrain aim. And what the aim constraint does is it actually aims an object at another object. So this is really helpful, not only for this kind of thing, but I've used this for like hydraulic type stuff, or like if you need to put a sword inside of a scabbard, you can use this exact rig for this. So I'm just going to tell it which is the or the aim direction. So if I look at the eye, you can see that the red, the positive red, is what's pointing at that. So that's going to be my first number here, which is 1 for the aim, because that's my X number. And then my up is Y. The Y is facing up. So I hit add. And now you'll see that if I grab the circle, he's facing there. That's pretty awesome. Okay. So now we'll call this eye control. All right, and I can also delete history on this circle. I don't need any history on that, okay? Deleting history on this will not affect the history on that. Remember, we never want to delete the history on this thing because then it'll make it go away and it won't work. All right. All right, so let's control the legs now. I want to do something different than grabbing this and rotating these because if I do a walk cycle, it's not really going to help me just to rotate those. So I want to be able to pick it up and put the leg exactly where I want it to be. So just like we did on the Pokeball, I'm going to create an IK handle. So I click on the top joint, which is the hip, and then I click on the bottom joint, which is the ankle, and that gives me an IK handle. And now I can move this around very easily. Okay, so I hit undo. Do the same thing on the other side. Click on this one. Click on that one. Okay. Now remember that we never want to actually move an IK handle because what happens is we don't have a place to reset it. So when I hit undo, it goes to like crazy numbers. It will never go back to 0. Even if I go to freeze transform, it'll never go back to 0. So the way around this is that we take the IK handle, we control G group it, we hold down V, and we move the pivot, D and V, and we move the pivot right back to that joint. Okay, so this is going to be the left foot control. Let's just call it left foot IK. Perfect. Left foot IK. And then I'm going to go to display, transform display, selection handle. Okay, so now I have a selection handle here that I can marquee and move that around and then reset these to 0, and he goes back to where he was. If I typed in 0, that would have worked perfectly. Unlock's not on. There we go. All right, so let's do it to this one. So we Control G group it. We hit D and V. We move the pivot to that joint. Spin around, make sure it's actually there. Display, transform, selection handle. Perfect. Call this one right IK. Okay. So now I can grab both of these and we can reset him to 0 and he goes back to that. Okay. So now I want to create an extra control that allows me to grab this entire thing and move this entire thing. I also want to be able to grab this and just rotate this like that way and maybe rotate it like this. I don't really like the way that's rotating. I'm going to hit F8 and change that. Right angle. And go back to my front view. Some of these orient or didn't orient correctly, but it's no big deal. All you have to do is just re-rotate that around. And I try to match it up so that in my scene, they're all the same, so that all my Y's are facing up for this kind of thing and all my X's are facing forward. That's good. So I'll do the same thing on the other leg. Click this joint, hit F8, grab that, go to the front view. Make sure Y is facing up. Make sure X is facing front. And then I just straighten this out. All right, that's good. Okay, so now I can grab this foot and I can twist it if I need to, or I can pivot it like this, or I can pivot it like that. Cool. All right, so now I'm going to create a couple of feet controls. So I'm going to create a circle again. And remember, you can go into Illustrator and you can make any shape you want. I'm just using these circles just because they're simple. That looks good there. I'll just keep it right there, right below his foot like this. Okay. So this is going to be left or right foot control. I'm going to duplicate it, scoot it over to this side. I'm just going to make my translate Z negative. That way it's even on that side. And we'll call this left foot. I'm going to take this one, shift click the hips, or actually the circle, and parent it. Grab this one, shift click the circle, parent it. And then I'm going to freeze my transforms and delete the history. Okay, so now I'm going to grab this IK and parent it to this control. I grab this IK, and it's the group, not the actual IK handle, and parent it to that. Okay, so now if I grab this foot and move it, it moves the same that it just did. But if I grab this and move it, it'll move the entire character. Okay, if these aren't parented, and this is something that we could actually pull out of here if we want to, so they're not parented anymore because I hit Shift P, you'll see that now his feet are staying in place as he moves. Now this is something that you have to kind of consider as you're doing a animation, as you're doing a rig, because I may want my character to be kind of like locked in place. I may want his feet to stay in place as his hips move. Imagine my character is supposed to be dancing. I want him to be able to move his hips side to side without moving his feet up and down. Okay, so I'm typically I leave it like this, and if I need to move the feet and the hips, I grab both of them and this, and then I'll move both of these together, okay? So even though I parented it, look at how I just unparented it, and now they're a separate item, okay? So I want them to actually be unparented, so when I grab this, I have complete control over everything that's in there. Okay. So now what I need to do is I need to create a knee controller, because right now there's nothing to control where the knees are pointing. So when his foot is up here like this, I may want his knee to be facing upwards. Okay. So I'm going to create a another circle. Actually, I'll create a different piece of geometry. Let's see if I can remember how to do this one. So I'm going to create a NURB circle or sphere, and under the object display, display, there we go, drawing overrides. So I can enable overrides and tell this to be maybe just a bounding box. And then I could also turn off things like in the render stats, I could turn off cast shadows, receive shadows, all this other stuff so it never actually renders. And now I basically just have this box that I could use as my controller for the knee. So you don't always have to use flat curve shapes. You can use stuff like this too. Okay. I don't typically like to do that, so I'm just going to create another circle. And I'm going to take this and snap it to the joint. So I'm going to hold down V and move this right on top of that knee joint, right there. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. I'm going to duplicate it, set the translate Z to negative. There we go. So this is going to be my right knee aim. This one will be my left knee aim. And I'm going to parent these to the hips. That'll be fine. Or to that circle, and then I'm going to freeze the transforms. Okay, I always freeze the transforms before I do what I need to do. I always parent in the structure, freeze the transforms, and then do what I got to do. So I'm going to take this IK handle that's here. Okay, so not the group IK that we created there. I'm going to click on the actual IK, which is right there. I'm going to shift click this controller, and I'm going to go to constrain pull vector. Oops, I'm going to select it in the right order, which is the circle first, then the little IK stick that's sticking out, and then constrain pull vector. There we go. Okay, so now what this is going to do is it's going to control the knees positioning. So just like the I one is pointing the eye at the circle, this is going to control the knees pointing at that. So I did it to both. So now if you look at this, you can see how I can turn the knees so that they aim whichever direction I need them to aim. Okay, so if I did put his foot up here like this, I could then take this item and put his knee up there like that. Okay, and again, because we froze the transforms, I can reset all this stuff to 0 and get him back to his standard pose. That's always your goal, because you never want to leave him in a random spot. You always want to be able to get back to that. Okay, let me delete history on this thing. Yep, still works. Cool. Okay, so I don't need these anymore, so I can grab these two things and hide them. So just hit Control H to hide them, because now these are controlling this feet, so I don't need that anymore. I'm going to take these two circles and add an attribute. So I'm going to show you just on one of these feet what you want to be able to do. Foot, or toe, grab both of these at the same time. Inner toe curl. Okay. -5, 10, and 0. Outer toe curl. -5, 10, and 0. Back toe curl. Okay. So now we have all these controls here, and just like you did on the Pokeball, when you get to that, you're going to create those controls for each one of these toes so that you can control the flexing. So for this one, I'm going to use rigging, window, animation. Let me just grab the joint and get it that way. I'm going to grab the rotate here. And I think it's just going to be the rotate Z. Yep. And go to set driven. Okay, so I grab these two joints, I load those as my driven, I grab this, that's my driver, that's my outer toe, these two rotate Z. Okay, so this is at 0. These are not rotated, so I'm going to say key. Then this is going to be at -5. And then this will curl up like this. And that will curl up like that. I'll key that. And then this one will be at 10. And this will curl in like this. And key. Okay. So now we have this curling. So you're going to do that exact same thing to all the other toes so that each one of the toes can be controlled from this. So if we needed to, we could pull this up and then have his toes bend. Okay, so if he's climbing on something or if he's walking, we can basically start to lift his foot up, but then also start to curl his toes. So it looks like his foot is landing on the ground. Just need to pull his hips down a little bit more. Yes, it is. Chicken monster. All right, so we'll leave it like that for now. Now, another control we want to have on these is the ability to take these ankles and be able to rotate them like this. Okay, so for something like that, I may want to use a different kind of control for it. Yeah, I think I do want to use a different control. So let's say that I created another circle here. And we'll just make this negative. Way. So I'm going to grab this and say right ankle controller. Same thing here, but call it left. All right. So these are going to be parented. This one will be parented to this. And then this one will be parented. Sure, grab the right thing. To this. Because I want this to move with it. So when I go like this, it moves with it. Okay. So these two things are going to be frozen transformed. And then I want to control the rotation of this joint with this thing. Okay, so I click on that circle, I shift click this joint, and then I go to constrain orient. Okay, and orient constrain will constrain rotations. That's what it does. So it basically like locks the rotations together. So now if I just hit add, and then I grab this and move it, what you'll see is that the foot here is not rotating anymore. Like if I grab this one, see how it rotates up like that? Because this one is automatically trying to figure out what the rotation is. Here I've locked it to that circle. So this won't actually rotate until I grab this circle and then rotate it manually. Okay? So that's awesome. Okay. So now let's grab this one and do the same exact thing. So I grab this circle first, and I shift click that joint, and then I go to constrain orient. Okay, and you saw that it moved a little bit. Let me hit undo just to see. I may have accidentally rotated that. No. Would it be better to? Yeah, because we still want to have the control over it. When it was the other way, we really didn't have control. So what was happening is if we were to grab the hips and pull it down, the toes were actually like dipping below the surface, right? So now they're like locked, so they're not going to dip below the surface. So now we have a lot of control over this. We can move him around like this if we need to. You'll see that if we go past where he can go, his feet will actually like lift off the ground. We can grab each foot individually and move it. We can grab this thing and rotate his foot how we need to. Eventually, we'll be able to curl these toes so that it looks like they're like actually like taking a step off the ground. And then when he goes to take another land his step, that other back toe can kind of curl and line up perfectly, which is going to be really cool. Now, I just want to do one more thing to the main setup here, which is I want to have this thing be able to blink. That would be a cool control to have. right? So I'm going to go to my animation editors, my shape editor, yes, shape editor, and I'm going to say create a blend shape off of this shape. And this is my default, so that's like where I'm at right now. That's what he looks like. And then I'm going to add a target, okay? And this target, I'm going to call this blink, okay? And I'm just basically going to shape this into what I think a blink should look like. So I have to go to my faces, and I'm going to grab these faces here, and I'm just going to move them down and give them some rotation, okay? And then I'm going to grab these faces here. Yes. I mean, grab these two and squeeze them in. These two and squeeze them up. There we go. Now you'll see that the eye is kind of poking through. I need to also pull this down a little bit and then pull this out a little bit. There we go. Okay. So that looks like a blink, or at least he's like chewing his eye. So now let's test it out. It works. Awesome. Okay, cool. So now what I want to do is I don't want to have to go into this to control that eye blinking because that'll be annoying. Especially because as I move the eye, I may want to just like set keyframes right there. So I'm going to grab the character here, and you'll see that we now have this blend shape attribute, and it has a blink controller. That's my blink. What? Oh, there it goes. It was just display. Whew. So sometimes display will do that. It's just kind of weird how it does it, but it does. Okay. So what I want to do is have this circle be able to control that. So I'm going to go to my modify. I'm going to go to add attribute. I'm going to say blink 0, 10, 0. Okay. Now, well, actually, yeah, I want to go to 10. Okay. On their blink that they have here, they labeled it 0 to 1. So you'll see it's a very quick blink. But I want to basically remap that because I may want to go like, like you said, angry eyes, right? So I want it to be kind of like a slit. So I want to be able to control that better. So 1 to 10 or 0 to 10 gives me better control. So one way we could do that is expressions, right? So we've seen how expressions, we could go in there and type this thing equals this times 10 or divided by 10 or whatever it is. We could also do a set driven. So we're connecting those two things. I'm going to show you a different way. And sometimes it helps to do it more visually, I guess. So this is the hypershade, which typically you would use for texturing things. But for this, I'm going to actually grab these two items and click on this arrow, these two double arrows. That didn't do it. Graph, input and output connections. No. Add selected nodes to graph. No, I think I still have the Lambert selected. Click this. I can use another one if this one doesn't work. I thought this was where, whatever. I'll just use the other one. I'm going to go to the node editor, which is right here, and this will show me all my stuff. Okay. So if you ever wanted to get into like gaming, there's a lot of stuff nodes, where they take these nodes, they connect nodes to each other. That's how a lot of the game stuff actually like connects to each other. So I'm going to graph the inputs and outputs together. Now this is really, really confusing to look at, but I just need to see one thing here, which is my blend shape. Okay, and not that. Body shape, skin cluster. Are you down here? Eye constraint. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Let's put that over. Nope. Where is my blend shape? Skin cluster, head tip. All right, let's try to find this real quick. Body. Blend shape, there you are. Yep, that's it. Okay. So why weren't you in the node editor? That's a good question. Blend shape. All right. Oh, we'll forget this one. We'll just use the hypergraph. Window hypergraph connections. This will show you everything that's there. So this is all the stuff that goes into making this guy what he is. I'm going to shift click both of these and graph them both out. And what I want to do is take this blend shape wherever he went right here. And my eye control shape. My eye control shape, my blend shape. And I'm just going to middle drag blend shape set onto eye control shape and say more or other. There we go. Why aren't you playing nice today? I'll grab I and reload this. Fine, we'll do it all manually. Let's do it all manually. So window, general editors, connection editor. I'm going to click on this and reload this as my left. I'm going to click on blend shape and reload that as my left. There we go. So somewhere in here should be blink. Input, wait, target. All right, they've either changed stuff or I'm just, oh, there it is, blink. Duh. Okay. And then this one is going to be the right. Perfect. Blink. Okay, so the way that this works, this is a connection editor. This is kind of like set driven. So on the left, this is what's going to be controlled. This is what's going to be control. This is what's going to be the controlling object. This is what's going to be the controlled object. So on the left, I want to have my eyeball or my circle here where I have blink. Okay. And blink is going to control the blend shape on the right. I just have to find the blink again. Blink, blink, blink. Where did you go now? You're right there. Blend shape 1, yes. Envelope, wait. There it is. Under weight, I went to blink. Okay, so now if I test this, I can grab this and change that value. Now with blend shapes, you can actually go further. So even though it goes from 0 to 1, if I go 0 to 10 in this case, it's going to freak out. Okay, like that. But if I go 0 to 1 with this, it works pretty easy. Okay. So what I need to do is create some way to connect this thing to this controller so that it goes a little bit quicker. So if I go to my hypergraph again, and I'm going to create a multiply divide node. Come on, there you are. And what I'm going to do is take my circle here, load that into the connection editor. So I'm going to say, there's my circle, and then on the right side is going to be my inputs. and I'm going to connect this to input X. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm taking that blink information and connecting it to the input X, and then I'm going to take this and load it to the left, grab the face here, blend shape, load that in the right, and so my output is going to then go to my blink. There we go. Okay, so now what does this do? So it takes this number, which is 0 right now, puts it into this multiply divide, and it's multiplying 0 times 1, and then that should give us 0, but for some reason it's giving us 1. Oh, because I put input 2, that's why. Output to blink. There we go. So now it's going to match perfectly. Okay, so now we're going to have the exact same result. So 0 to 1 is going to be doing this. But if I go here and I do my math, I times it by 0.1. And so what's going to happen now is my 0 to 10 is going to give us a lot more control. Okay, because it's going to take this number, multiply it times this number, and that will give us the blend shape thing there. Okay, you can see why sometimes expressions or set driven are a little bit more straightforward, but some people like doing it that way. Okay, so now we have a lot more control. So now we can go into like this kind of look or that. We can even go further. Like if I do set this to like a -1, oops, it's not gonna let me go to -1 because I have to go edit attribute. This negative, let's say -10, just to make it really obvious. Way too far. There we go. Okay, so now we can go back to 0. So now we again have a lot more control over doing this. Now my preferred method, like I said, let me just delete this control, is to just go through here to the expressions. And I'm going to call this blend shape 1 dot blink equals I control dot blink times 0.1. And I typed something wrong. Let's see what I typed wrong. I think I did not put a capital B for this one. Yep, that was it. So now that works. Okay, so that's my preferred method just because it's pretty straightforward compared to all those different nodes. All right, so now he's pretty much rigged. Obviously, you have to finish the feet. The next video I'll have, I'll go through how to do this stuff and then how to start animating him. So what we're going to be doing is animating to basically just like a little walk cycle with him. And then we can take that walk cycle and duplicate it like a trillion times if we want to, and have like a whole flock of these guys running, which will be pretty awesome, right? And scary, I guess. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to save my stuff here so it doesn't crash. Awesome. All right.